Private jail calls that were never supposed to be heard are now all over the internet. But the real question is who leaked them? One rapper's life flipped overnight, not just an arrest, but leaks that could end his entire career. And trust me, these leaks didn't come from a random hacker. When Young Thug's jail calls started spreading online, fans said this wasn't a normal leak, it was a setup. But was the government really behind it? Imagine this, you're locked up, and suddenly your most private phone calls are being replayed by millions online. This isn't just about privacy, it's about destroying someone's future. Some say the system is against him, others say it's his own fault. But here's the truth, did Young Thug sabotage himself, or is someone else pulling the strings? On Monday night in Buckhead, Channel 2 cameras captured an exclusive moment, the arrest of rapper Young Thug, whose real name is Jeffrey Williams. That footage quickly spread, sparking new debates about his ongoing legal troubles. Soon after, the legal pressure on Young Thug reached a breaking point. Atlanta's district attorney filed a motion to revoke his probation, a move that could potentially send him straight back behind bars. The news alone was a heavy blow, but what came next pushed the situation into an even darker place. Around the same time, leaked recordings of Young Thug's private jail phone calls began to spread across the internet. These weren't random clips, these were deeply personal conversations that were never meant to see the light of day. They landed in the hands of blogs, YouTube channels, and social media pages, where they were replayed, dissected, and debated in front of millions. The leaks sparked outrage, not just among Thug's supporters, but also among those who value fairness in the justice system. One of the loudest voices came from rapper and media personality Benzino. He didn't mince words. To him, the leaks weren't just a violation of privacy, they were a violation of the Constitution itself. Benzino called the situation unconstitutional and suggested that the government had a hand in deliberately releasing the calls. His reasoning was straightforward. Normally, when media outlets like TMZ obtain exclusive content, it's plastered with watermarks and branding. That's their signature, their way of protecting the content they bought and proving ownership. But these leaked jail calls had none of that. No watermark. No source identified. Nothing. To Benzino, that detail mattered. How does a prison even allow private calls to get out? He asked, voicing the same question that many fans and observers were asking themselves. If TMZ bought them, their logo would be all over the clips. The fact that they don't have one tells you exactly where they came from. His implication was clear. The leaks weren't the result of some random hacker or shady insider trying to make a quick profit. Instead, they came from within the system itself. According to Benzino, the government intentionally allowed the recordings to circulate in order to sway public opinion and turn the court of law into a trial by media. The suggestion isn't as far-fetched as it may seem. In today's world, public perception can heavily influence a case long before it reaches a jury. A leaked clip, stripped of context, can be replayed endlessly on social media until it shapes a narrative that feels true, even if it isn't. Once the public buys into that narrative, it becomes harder for a defendant to be seen as innocent, even before stepping foot in court. For Thug, the timing couldn't have been worse. He was already fighting for his freedom in one of the most high-profile RICO cases in recent hip-hop history. Adding leaked calls into the mix created a storm of speculation. What exactly did he say on those tapes? Who was he speaking to? Could his words be used against him in court? Benzino's frustration reflected a larger concern about the justice system and its relationship with the media. He argued that leaking jail calls wasn't just an invasion of privacy, but also a tactic to manipulate the cultural conversation. They know what they're doing, he said, pointing to the careful way the leaks appeared online. First a clip on one blog, then another clip somewhere else, each one fueling debates about whether Thug was guilty, disloyal, or reckless. For Thug supporters, the leaks felt like a setup. They believed the state was stacking the deck, creating a public image of Thug that made it easier to justify revoking his probation. For critics, however, the leaks were seen as evidence of his recklessness, a sign that he couldn't stay out of trouble even when given a second chance. This clash of perspectives highlighted a deeper truth. In the age of social media, trials don't just happen inside a courtroom. They happen on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Each leaked phone call became another piece of ammunition in a digital war of opinions. But behind all the noise, Benzino's central question still lingered. How could such private material escape from the prison system in the first place? Jails and prisons are supposed to keep those records secure. If the system can't protect the confidentiality of inmate phone calls, then what does that say about due process? In Benzino's eyes, it was bigger than Young Thug. It was about fairness. If the government can use leaks to quietly push a narrative, then anyone facing trial, celebrity or not, could end up losing their case in the public arena before they ever face a judge. As debates raged online, the situation showed no signs of slowing down. Some fans defended Thug fiercely, insisting the leaks were unfair and designed to destroy him. Others claimed the recordings only exposed the truth he was trying to hide. Regardless of which side people took, one thing was certain: the leaks had changed the entire tone of the case. For young Thug, the battle was no longer just about legal arguments and courtrooms. It was about image, reputation, and public perception, all shaped by a handful of phone calls that were never meant to leave the prison walls. And for Benzino, this was exactly the point. By leaking those tapes, the system had turned the fight for justice into something else entirely, a spectacle where the audience had already been told what to believe. Benzino claimed state and federal officials closely monitor social media, using leaks like these to turn the public against artists. His suspicion seemed justified when the state of Georgia officially announced its plan to revoke Thug's probation and send him back behind bars. The timing of everything made people pay even closer attention. Right before the leaked jail recordings started circulating, young Thug had already put himself under a harsh spotlight. On Instagram, he openly called out Officer Marissa Viviero, a figure who wasn't just any cop, but a key witness in another major case. Thug didn't hold back. In a post that quickly went viral, he labeled her the biggest liar in the DA's office. He didn't stop there. He also reshared messages that read, "All my homies hate Viviero." To his supporters, this was just Thug being outspoken, venting frustration at a system he felt was targeting him. But to prosecutors, it was something very different. To them, it looked like intimidation. When a defendant on probation points fingers at a law enforcement officer and rallies the public against her, prosecutors see it as a threat, whether or not it was meant that way. And that gave the state even more ammunition to argue for revoking his probation. The situation highlighted just how delicate Thug's circumstances were. On one hand, he was fighting for his life in court, accused of leading a criminal enterprise under the RICO Act. On the other hand, he was still trying to maintain a connection with his fans and defend himself publicly. But every post, every word, and every leak became potential evidence that could be spun against him. When the probation violation motion landed, prosecutors were quick to point to the Instagram post about Officer Viviero as proof of Thug's disregard for the rules. They argued that such comments could incite harassment or even violence against a government witness, something the courts take very seriously. The timing of the leaked jail calls, arriving just after that online outburst, only made matters worse. For Thug's critics, it was a case of self-sabotage. They argued that he should have known better than to speak on a witness while his case was still active. For his fans, however, the bigger question wasn't about what Thug said, it was about why these leaks and motions were happening all at once. To them, it felt orchestrated, like every move he made was being watched, documented, and used against him in real time. That's why the post about Officer Viviero struck such a nerve. It wasn't just a random rant. It came during a moment when Thug's future was hanging in the balance, and prosecutors were looking for any reason to tighten the grip. By publicly targeting someone tied to law enforcement, he gave them exactly the opening they needed. The debate then spilled onto social media and into hip-hop commentary. Was Thug simply exercising his right to free speech, calling out someone he believed was dishonest? Or was he crossing the line into threatening behavior, making life harder for himself in court? Benzino, DJ academics, and other cultural voices weighed in, pointing out how dangerous this type of post could be. They reminded fans that the legal system doesn't play by the same rules as the internet. What might look like a harmless meme or a venting session on Instagram could easily be framed as witness intimidation in front of a judge. At the same time, the leaks of Thug's jail calls fueled even more speculation. The recordings seemed to appear almost strategically, arriving right after the Viviero post. To many observers, the timing was suspicious. Why would private jail calls suddenly flood the internet right after Thug took aim at a key officer? It raised the possibility that the leaks weren't random at all, but deliberately timed to pile pressure on him when he was most vulnerable. For prosecutors, the combination of the Instagram post and the leaks painted a picture of a man unwilling or unable to follow the rules of probation. For Thug's supporters, it painted a different picture, a system stacking the deck, making sure every move he made was turned into evidence against him. Either way, the fallout was immediate. The DA's office argued that Thug's online actions showed a clear disregard for authority. They insisted that calling out Officer Viviero wasn't just disrespectful, it was dangerous. In their eyes, he wasn't just speaking to his fans, he was sending a signal to his associates, the very people prosecutors believe make up the YSL organization. And so, what might have been dismissed as a reckless social media post became something much larger. It became part of the legal battle itself, folded into motions and arguments that would decide whether Thug stayed out on probation or was sent back into custody. For the public, it was another reminder of how closely the music industry and the legal system have become intertwined. In hip-hop, artists have long used their platforms to call out injustice and speak truth to power. But in Thug's case, that same instinct to speak out was being used as evidence of wrongdoing. The story also raised bigger questions. How much should an artist on probation be allowed to say online? At what point does free expression turn into something the courts can label as threatening? And perhaps most importantly, who benefits when those expressions are amplified through leaks and media coverage at the worst possible time? As the case moved forward, one thing was clear: the post about Officer Viviero was no small detail. It had become a central piece of the prosecution's strategy, proof, at least in their eyes, that Thug couldn't be trusted to follow the conditions of his release. Combined with the leaked jail calls, it placed him in one of the toughest positions of his career, fighting not just against charges in court, but against a public narrative that seemed increasingly stacked against him. For fans and critics alike, the situation served as a cautionary tale. In today's world, a single post, a single leak, or a single comment can be enough to tip the scales in a high-stakes case. And for young Thug, calling out Officer Viviero at that moment may have been the spark that gave prosecutors exactly what they needed to push harder for his probation to be revoked. At the same time, investigators were keeping a close eye on him. Thug had already been pulled over for speeding, a sign to many that authorities were tightening their watch. But things escalated when he released a new track titled "Closing Arguments." In the song, Thug directly addressed the snitching accusations, naming names and accusing others of betrayal. That move violated the conditions of his probation, which specifically barred him from targeting or slandering anyone tied to the YSL RICO case. Industry figures quickly reacted. Whack 100 claimed he had hours of unreleased recordings of Thug, including alleged comments about Drake, Future, and even personal matters. He warned that dropping the song would only make things worse for the rapper. Still, Thug doubled down in his lyrics, saying, "Yeah, I did what I did trying to help my brother, no regrets." Those words drew fire from YSL co-founder Mondo, who accused Thug of being the one who set off the snitching culture within YSL in the first place, sparking the very RICO case now threatening to end his career. Long before the current courtroom battles, critics claim young Thug himself played a role in sparking the YSL RICO case. They point back to the Lil Wayne tour bus shooting years ago, saying Thug was one of the first to cooperate with police. To them, that was the real beginning of everything that followed. When new leaks surfaced, Thug tried to push the blame elsewhere. In clips tied to his song "Closing Arguments," he pointed directly at Ghana, accusing him of giving prosecutors what they needed to transform YSL from a music crew into a criminal gang in the eyes of the law. Thug argued that by admitting YSL was a gang and saying members committed crimes, Ghana handed the state its RICO case. That claim divided the industry. Tekashi 6ix9ine jumped in, blasting the hypocrisy he saw. "When it's me, everybody calls it snitching," he said. "But when it's Thug, the rules change. Why is everyone so quiet now?" His reaction went viral, stirring debates across hip-hop about who really snitched first. Then came another twist. A leaked interrogation video showed young Thug naming names, which sparked chaos inside YSL. Members began leaving the group chat, and YSL co-founder Mondo called Thug out publicly. On Instagram Live, he accused Thug of misleading the culture and said fans were being brainwashed into ignoring what was right in front of them. Amid the fallout, Pee Wee Roscoe, once a close associate, spoke up. He defended Thug, saying the interrogation clips were being twisted and that Thug never directly betrayed him. "He did what a man is supposed to do," Roscoe insisted. But not everyone bought it. Some fans believed Thug had pressured or even paid Roscoe to back him up. The drama didn't stop there. More leaked calls revealed Thug mentioning Lil Durk's name, sparking rumors that he had also spoken about Durk's crew while behind bars. An associate of Durk clapped back online, calling Thug a gossiping snitch and mocking his style. That only fueled the fire. Still, Thug pushed back. He reminded everyone that he had even paid lawyer Brian Steele out of his own pocket to help Durk in the past. His sister also stepped forward, saying people only call Thug a snitch because they know he can't return to Atlanta right now. "Y'all know my brother," she said. "He's not what they're saying." At this point, the story has become bigger than just one rapper. It's about loyalty, betrayal, and how fast public opinion can shift when leaked tapes and courtroom drama collide. As more jail calls continued to leak, Young Thug's camp began suspecting someone on the inside was behind it. DJ Academics fueled the theory, saying Ghana's team might have been holding onto recordings and releasing them strategically to damage Thug's image. He suggested the leaks could have been obtained through legal access, since defendants in the case are sometimes able to request those files. But if Ghana's team was really responsible, why weren't his calls leaking too? That question made some believe the federal government might be the real source, slowly drip-feeding audio to break Thug down. Right after Academics pointed the finger at Ghana, another recording surfaced, this time of Thug calling quality control's Pierre P. Thomas a rat and criticizing Lil Baby for working with him. That was a dangerous move. Thug has long valued his relationship with Baby, so when fans started running with the clip, he jumped on Instagram Live to defend himself. But instead of calming things down, he went on a wild rant that many saw as him spiraling under pressure, attacking rivals, mocking fake lifestyles, and even denying photos fans believed showed him wearing a skirt. The timing of these rants only strengthened the belief that the leaks were designed to push him into self-destruction. Each time a damaging clip came out, Thug's probation looked shakier. Realizing the pattern, Thug's team allegedly tried to fight back by leaking their own audio that painted him in a better light. One call with 21 Savage showed Thug speaking calmly, saying rappers shouldn't have rushed to clown Ghana after his release. He admitted being disappointed in some, but stopped short of labeling anyone directly. Still, every time Thug looked sympathetic, another leak would land to undo it. Charleston White inserted himself into the storm, vowing to personally destroy Thug's reputation. "Keep him locked up 6 more months," White said. "He'll tell too. I'm the prophet, I told y'all." Then, almost on cue, yet another interrogation video went viral. In it, Thug appeared to tell investigators he'd eventually share more information if they promised not to let the public know. That clip fueled speculation that Charleston White himself might be involved in leaking the tapes. The fallout was brutal. A viral tweet summed it up harshly. Young Thug came out of jail, burned bridges, dropped no good music, and got exposed as a rat. Soon after, big names like Rallo, 6ix9ine, Wack 100, and DJ Academics went live together, reacting to the situation. For them, the message was clear: if the streets don't reject Thug the way they rejected others, then the rules of loyalty and snitching no longer mean anything. The tension around Young Thug kept growing as more voices joined the conversation. Critics accused him of hiding behind a mask for too long, saying that eventually the truth would come out. Tekashi 6ix9ine jumped in next, and surprisingly, most of the chat agreed with him, a rare sign that things were looking bad for Thug. Wack 100 then doubled down. He reminded everyone that Thug himself had once labeled Ghana a rat when he came home, but the culture excused it because of his popularity. "People forget," Wack said, "Thug was telling way back in 2015 when he got caught in LA with a couple of sticks." Where did those cases go? The conversation only got deeper. Academics revealed that Thug still earns royalties off Ghana, possibly giving Ghana a motive to leak damaging audio as payback. After all, Thug was still running YSL from jail, and industry insiders claimed labels rarely cut ties completely with so-called snitches. They just move contracts around to keep collecting money. Meanwhile, YSL Woody issued his own warning. He told Lil Baby and 21 Savage to stay out of Thug's situation or risk being dragged down with him, the same way Thug was holding on to Ghana. Soon after, 21 Savage quietly unfollowed Thug on Instagram. Academics explained Woody's frustration. Thug had manipulated him in the past, never paid for his lawyer, and left him to fend for himself in interrogations. Looking back, Woody admitted he was blinded by loyalty. He wasn't the only one. Rapper Rallo also spoke up, claiming Thug ruined his career. He said Thug lied to the feds and even pressured Lil Baby to cut ties with him. Now, Rallo argued Thug was facing the same isolation he had once used against others. Thug didn't stay silent. He fired back at Rallo, saying their situations weren't the same. According to Thug, Rallo had directly told on people, while his own confession was just a slip-up in an old case where he tried to convince police that he wasn't beefing with Lil Wayne. Thug also reminded fans that Rallo had cooperated in other cases too. Academics tried to calm the storm, pointing out how fans applied double standards. If we like the rapper, he said, we'll say it wasn't really snitching. If we don't, then it's automatically snitching. That's how it works. For regular listeners, though, the truth is simpler. Most civilians don't care. They just want the music. As AK put it, fans don't want to see Thug back in jail. They just want good songs. The streets might care about loyalty, but for the rest of us, it's entertainment.